This video is in defense of the Black Lives Matter movement. This movement has been under attack recently. Fox News has labeled this movement as a terrorist organization, as a hate group, as a murder movement. And you have other critics who condemn the slogan of Black Lives Matter. They want to say, well, all lives matter or lives matter. And they want to just ignore the slogan of Black Lives Matter. So I'm going to provide my response. And I wrote about this on my blog, New Possibilities, and I'll provide a link to that article. But I wanted to do a video version of that article to express my thoughts and to hear from you all as well, to hear what your thoughts are as well. So a police officer was killed in Harris County, Texas, and a lot of people are outraged. Apparently, there's a black person who has been accused of the shooting. He's been charged with the crime. And so people are trying to tie the Black Lives Matter to that horrific act, that act of violence. They are relying on videos that were released after this killing, in which some protesters were chanting about pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon. And they were suggesting that that was a slogan designed to encourage violence. And they're trying to say that the rhetoric of the movement has inspired people to commit acts of violence. And after this police officer was killed in Texas, you had one person get on social media, a white man, an older white man with a cowboy hat on, the stereotypical redneck, get on camera and threaten protesters. He encouraged white people to drive the protesters away by using slingshots and firearms. So this is, the kind of tension or pressure that's being applied against the Black Lives Matter movement. So first of all, there is no connection whatsoever between Black Lives Matter and the killing of that police officer in Harris County. The Harris County Sheriff acknowledges that they have no evidence of a motive. There is no proof that this person was a member of the Black Lives Matter movement or affiliated with the movement or inspired by the movement. In fact, there's talk about this killer being mentally ill, having a history of mental illness. So the effort to tie that killing to the Black Lives Matter movement has to be a failure because there is no proof of a connection. And the Black Lives Matter movement has never condoned violence against police. There are no statements from any of the leaders of the movement encouraging people to commit acts of violence against the police. The overwhelming majority of Black Lives Matter protests are nonviolent. I would say that probably all of them have been nonviolent. The protests that are led by the Black Lives Matter movement have been nonviolent. They advocate nonviolence and they practice nonviolence. So I don't understand how anyone can say that a group that advocates nonviolence and practices nonviolence can promote or encourage acts of violence. It just doesn't make any kind of sense at all to me. Now, they called the Black Lives Matter movement a hate group, which is absurd. When I think of a hate group, I think of an organization like the KKK. I think of skinheads and neo-Nazis. I think of groups that have bombed churches, shot people, lynched people, like the KKK has done. There's no evidence whatsoever that the Black Lives Matter has committed any such acts of violence. So to call them a terrorist organization is preposterous, because terrorist organizations rely on violence to promote their politics. And there's no proof whatsoever that the Black Lives Matter has relied on violence to promote their agenda, their political agenda. There's no evidence that they hate people. The Black Lives Matter movement does not hate the police. The movement hates police brutality. The movement hates police racial profiling. The movement hates police misconduct. They don't hate all police. Obviously they could have chose a better slogan during some of those demonstrations, but those slogans are ambiguous at best. Those slogans are not an incitement to violence. They're not encouraging violence. But again, when they talk about pigs, they're not talking about all police officers. They're talking about officers who abuse people, who brutalize people without justification, police officers who harass black people simply because they're black. That's what they're talking about. Now, one of the main points that people use to attack the Black Lives Matter movement is this. They attack the very slogan, Black Lives Matter. They have a problem with that slogan. And the fact that so many people have a problem with that slogan tells you that there is a problem in this society in which we live. They want to just have a blanket statement of all lives matter. If all lives truly mattered, there would be no need for the Black Lives Matter slogan. The fact of the matter is, black people are disproportionately killed by police. And a ProPublica report states that 31.17 African Americans are killed by the police in shootings per 1 million people. For white people, the number of deadly shootings is 1.74 per million. That's like a 30 times difference between the two. It seems like African Americans are 30 times more likely to be a victim of police shootings, fatal police shootings. And the thing is that often when black people are killed by these police, rarely are charges brought against the killers. And in the few instances where charges are actually brought, often the accused is not convicted. Often they're free to walk and enjoy life. We have so many examples of this. We have Darren Wilson, who shot Michael Brown, an unarmed teenager, shot him down. And according to witnesses, the brother had his hands up at the time when he was shot to death. Darren Wilson did not get charged with the crime, so obviously he didn't get convicted with the crime. You have the example of Randall Clarke, an officer in North Carolina, who shot down Jonathan Ferrell. The case was brought to trial, and there was a mistrial, and the prosecutor didn't have the balls to bring a second trial or to try the case again. So you have another white killer of a black man walking free as a bird. And there are so many other examples. One of the infamous cases of the 90s was Rodney King. You had video footage of police officers beating Rodney King like a slave, and those police officers walked. And you had an example in Staten Island, New York. A police officer choked Eric Garner to death on camera, and that police officer walked. See, when you have a disproportionate number of black people getting killed by the police, and no police officer is held accountable for these unjustified killings, that's just a prime example of how black lives don't matter in this society. And that's why it's so important that you have an organization that demands that black lives matter, that demands that black lives be treated the way all other lives are treated. Black lives should be just as precious as any other life in this country and in this world. But since people take our lives with impunity, we have to remind the world that our lives do matter. So there is a need for that slogan, Black Lives Matter. Now, I heard this black sheriff, a Milwaukee County sheriff by the name of David Clarke, suggest that Black Lives Matter is weakening policing in this country. As I wrote on my blog, that assertion is ridiculous. Police brutality is weakening policing in this country. Racial profiling is weakening policing in this country. See, when you brutalize people, when you abuse people and harass people, they are less likely to report crimes to the police in such cases. They are less likely to cooperate with the police. So that makes the community less safe because criminals are able to get away with crime. If you really want to strengthen policing in this country, you have to build better relationships with the communities that are being policed, with the black community. You have to restore trust by treating people with respect, treating them with dignity. There has to be some accountability. Without that, there will never be trust between the community and the police. And without that trust, the police will not be effective in the community. So those are just some of my comments. And I also wanted to mention this. Often you have these people, these Negro surrogates or Negro proxies, Negro puppets that they parade out here to try to discredit the movement. They use Negro pawns because they add legitimacy to racist arguments that are used against black people. Because if a black person is making a statement, they can say, well, it can't possibly be racist. This is a black person making that statement. So you have these black people that they parade out here to defend the police, to defend racial profiling, to defend police brutality. These people are nothing but modern day traitors, and they need to be called out as such.